Hello everyone, and welcome to this video where I'm going to be talking about the early season cycling transfers of 2021, or at least the most important riders in my eyes. So of course, August 1st was the signing period beginning, and of course earlier than that some signings were confirmed, however August 1st is the official date, and now it's August 9th. So in the ensuing days from August 1st, a couple of signings have been made, and I'm going to make a list of the most important ones, or at least I already have, and grade them. So as you can see, there's a grading, there's a team 2020 and where they've transferred in 2021. And I will say my grading's a little bit lenient. I don't know if that's just me or else, or if I'm just wrong, but yeah, I've been a bit lenient with these gradings. Yeah, so of course A to E scale, of course, your normal school grading scale. So the first transfer we're going to talk about is Marc Soler, the infamous Netflix doco lad, who's gone from movie star to UAE, or the Middle Eastern oil hoarders, as I will be calling them. No, I won't be calling them, or at least their owners. But I won't be calling them that. They are Middle Eastern oil hoarders, but you know they're UAE for cycling reasons. So I'm going to give them a B plus. I think Marc Soler is a very good rider. I think he's very inconsistent. He can be inconsistent, but when he comes good, he is good. We can't doubt that. This man has won Vuelta a España stages. He's done very good on a couple of stages. Tour de Suisse, he was good. He's got the ability to pull out some really stellar performances, and I think UAE have shown that they are willing to continue to bolster their climbing stocks, especially for Tadej Pogacar, and I think this is quite a solid addition to that. So therefore, I've given them B plus. I think he's quite an above-average climber for them. And then you got Pascal Ackermann, again to UAE as well. I will say, quick disclaimer, my pronunciations are going to be quite exaggerated. I apologize. I'm not sure if they're exaggerated or how I think a European would say it. So that exaggeration is basically how I think a European would say it. So let's hope they're okay. But yeah, he's going to UAE as well. I think UAE, of course, the sprinter for this year was Fernando Gaviria, but I'm going to assume he's going to be gone. I like this transfer. Ackermann, pure speed-wise, he's a very good sprinter. He's very fast. He's up there with Sam Bennett, maybe a little bit slower than Ewan. However, the main problem is that Ackermann, in most of his sprints, he acts as a lead out. He goes from like 250, 300 out, has no idea of the barriers and the sort of signposts that say 250, 300. He just goes, he just goes. He just goes for it, and that's not beneficial. He needs to sprint with his brain a little bit more. But he doesn't. So that's why he doesn't get a lot of victories. However, I think UAE signing him B+, maybe UAE people need to tell him, you need to look at the line, you need to look at the signposts that are there for you and sprint at 200 meters. That is definitely one thing they should be doing. But also, I think the reason why I haven't given this an A or an A minus or an A+, I think the main reason is that Ackermann, with UAE, they don't really have the best lead out. Now, Gaviria didn't really get a lot of good results, and whilst a lot of that was because of himself, I think the lead out also was a little bit at fault because of that. And I think I'll give them a B plus because Ackermann is still a good sprinter, he's just not a top tier sprinter. And also I think a lot of UAE's focus, quite rightly so, has gone to mountains and less to sprint, so B plus. And perhaps if they got more signings, maybe that would go to an A minus in terms of the sprint area. Then you've got Biniam Girmay, who's gone from Delco to Intermarché. Now this is a fantastic signing. Biniam is a fantastic young African puncher with a very nice pop at the finish line. He's got quite good results so far this season, not quite standout results. He hasn't got a win, he hasn't got a top 3, but quite a number of top 10s in some of these smaller French, Italian spring classics. And that is his role at Intermarché. That's going to be his role. He's going to be the leader in those smaller races along with Pasqualon, and that makes quite a good 1-2 punch for Intermarché. And I think based off that, he's a very good rider at Pro Continental level, probably a top 30 sort of rider, and therefore he's an A grade for them. Then Nicolas Egg, from Trek Segafredo to UNO-X, dropping down to the Pro Conti level. I think this is a B plus signing because Nicolas Egg is a solid climber. I think he came 16th in the Tour de Suisse this year at World Tour level, which is a very good result. And he's dropping down to Pro Conti, so I think he might be filling sort of a Ben Herman's type role at some of these Pro Conti races where he is, favorite for top 5 in a lot of these smaller Pro Conti races, where the World Tour isn't quite as active. And based off that, he's going to be quite good. Also, UNO-X, it kind of fits their mold of continuing to bolster their climbing, and of course he's Danish, which fits the Scandinavian vibe. So I think this is a fantastic signing for them, and it's going to continue to strengthen their team, which they've shown quite good promise throughout the season already with guys like Rasmus Tiller and Marcus Hulgaard. Then you've got Joao Almeida, who of course from the Koning to UAE, of course. Almeida had a rift with Patrick Lefevre, the enigmatic team manager, before the Giro as well, before he was defending his top 5 in the Giro from last year, rather interestingly. And he, of course, stated Almeida was not going to re-sign, and therefore he's gone to UAE. And this is the first A+ grade of the whole transfer season, in my opinion. I think Almeida is a top class, top 5 GT sort of rider for the next 5 or 10 years, because this guy is very well-rounded. He's got the climbing ability, he's got the time trialing ability, he's got good punch, he's got a good sprint as well if you need that. He's very handy in a flat finish. And I think for UAE, I think this really bolsters their climbing. Again, just like Marc Soler, I think Almeida's slightly better than Majka. I think it's nip and tuck, but I think especially his third week recovery is very good. So I think Almeida, I'm just going to give it to him. I think he's going to continue to improve their climbing talent to, of course, help Tadej Pogacar, who has won 2 consecutive Tour de France's. So yeah, A+. I think as well as helping Pogacar, I think Almeida should also get a role as another GT leader. So the GT that Tadej does not go to, I think Almeida should definitely lead there, and I think he could definitely top 5 in that. So I think a very good signing for UAE. Then you've got a couple of Norwegians going to Intermarché. You've got Sven-Erik Bystrøm and Alexander Kristoff from UAE to Intermarché with B+ and A- grades. I think these guys, Bystrøm is someone who's been developing recently. He did quite well at Tour de Suisse, managing to follow, managing to get over some climbs and sprinting. I think he got a couple of top 10 places in the Tour de Suisse. So at Pro Continental level especially, I think he's going to get some solid results in some of these harder sprint stages, just like sort of like the ones Biniam Girmay can test in. Then you got Kristoff, who again is sort of a similar mold, not as strong in the climbs, but more punchier, more suited to classics, Northern Classics type racing. He's gone to Intermarché as well. I think this is a fantastic signing. I think Kristoff is someone who's got a really good kick towards the end of a stage, of course. I mean, I don't think that everyone knows that. That's an objective thing, Rufford, you idiot. Kristoff's very fast at the end, however, he's not as fast as he was before. But for Pro Continental level, I think he's, top 3, top 5 sprinter at that level, and I think he'll be racking up quite a few solid places for Intermarché in some of those 1.Pro races and the 1.2 races. Then you've got Quentin Pache and Michael Storer, who have both gone to Groupama, and they're sort of that B range. I think Quentin Pache especially is sort of a filler rider. He's of course French, so it fits the mold of Groupama. He's one of those breakaway guys who did quite well at the Tour, got into quite a significant amount of breakaways, but he's not really someone who's won a lot of races. He's not going to win. He might get a couple of top 10s here and there, pick them up, but he's not really someone who's got that, if it was a PCM analogy, that +5 day in him to win a stage. And then you've got Michael Storer, who recently won the Tour de l'Ain, and I think that's what Groupama have looked at when signing him. Of course, I don't think it happened that recently, so I don't know. Maybe they didn't. But this is a pretty good deal. I think Storer's got quite a bit of potential. He won the Tour de l'Ain, as I've just said, winning a stage there. And he did quite well in some of the breakaways in the Giro. So I think based off that, he's going to be a sort of breakaway rider / maybe contesting some of the smaller 1-week races. Then you've got Marco Haller, who's gone to Bora. So these are some Bora signings in this streak. Haller, he showed himself in the Tour de France. He's a good solid rider at World Tour level, but he's nothing special. He's not going to give you victories in classics anymore. He's not going to be a particularly good lead out, maybe 3rd or 4th man, but that's about it. He's decent on the flat, decent rouleur, but again, as like Quentin Pache, more of a filler sort of rider for Bora. But he's a good teammate to have in the team, that's for sure. Then you've got some climbers Bora have signed to add to Kelderman, Conrad, Schachmann, those sort of guys. You've got Higuita and Hindley, B+ for both of them. I think they're both kind of a similar level. Hindley kind of dropped from his Giro 2020 level this year. However, maybe I think Bora have betted on that he'll return to somewhere near that level, because I think he's got to at some point. And he's a good rider. He can do some decent 1-week results. I think they're really going to be hoping for that Giro form to arrive again. at some point. And then we got Higita, who he's shown a little bit of inconsistency, but when he's good, he is very good. At that Prati di Tivo stage in the Tirreno, I think he got third, which was a very good result, behind Pogacar and Yates, I think it was. Or definitely Pogacar. So that was a very good result from Higita, and I think he's more of a he could be a 3-week rider, could be a 1-week rider. I think he's more of a 1-day rider. He's a good climber, really good punch, good sprint, and based on those attributes, I think he should be targeting the 1-day races for the most part for Bora, and I think he'll go very well with Schachmann and Conrad, who are already there. So that's pretty solid. Then you've got Peter Sagan and Entourage. So what is this? Peter Sagan and Entourage to Total Energies. Of course, Peter Sagan, he doesn't actually let teams just sign him. Of course, he has to ensure the teams will also agree to sign other riders, such as his brother Juraj Sagan, and I believe Danielos and Maciek Bodnar as well as physiotherapists and psychologists and whatever. I mean, Sagan does what he wants, and his demands are quite plentiful, but apparently Total Energies has accepted them, with De Koning, of course, not accepting them previously. Of course, but I've given them A+, and I think this is an ongoing trend with some of these pro-continental teams. They seem to be really interested in sort of classic sprinters, or just sprinters in general, sort of sprinters that have gone over the hump a little bit, and they're a little bit less than what they used to be, but are still very solid riders for their level that they're riding in. And I think Sagan sort of epitomizes that, because Sagan is still a very good rider. He's still winning Giro stages, still winning Tour de Suisse stages like he always has. He's still very good in some of these harder sprint stages. Not the hardest sprint stages. He's not quite 2016 Tirreno crazy climbing performance into a sprint sort of level. But he's still a good rider, still someone who's going to give you countless top fives, especially at pro-continental level. And whilst Total Energies, of course, they do have to pay for more than just Sagan with the entourage. But I think it's well worth the payment based off just marketing and the results he's going to give them. And of course, Sagan will give you the team more energies because they want all the energies. They want Total Energies. But yeah, A+ signing. Then you got Juan Ayuso. I'm sorry for the debatable humor there. Juan Ayuso to UAE, and this is a surefire A+. This is one of the best signings. This was confirmed a couple of weeks ago, not a couple of weeks ago. This was confirmed 4 or 5 weeks ago, actually. And of course, he's been riding for UAE since that signature at some of the smaller Spanish races. Did solid at San Sebastian, so gotten some good solid reps in the World Tour already. And Juan Ayuso is someone that's won the Babies Euro this year. He's won pretty much every single race that he's this is not running, cycled. And yeah, therefore it's an A+. This guy's an 18-year-old. This guy, a lot of people are comparing him to Contador, can time trial, can even sprint, can climb, can just do everything. Very good rider, and he's someone that potentially down the road, he's someone that can either challenge Pogacar or he'll go to the GTs that Pogacar isn't. So Ayuso, he's a generational talent, someone of Remco Evenepoel's mold potentially, and he's a fantastic rider, and therefore the A+ tag has been given to him. Then you got Sam Bennett, who's gone from De Koning to Bora Hansgrohe. Of course, he was one of the riders that Lefevere labelled as not signable for whatever reason, and of course they've had a pretty ugly rift in the media recently with Lefevere saying that Bennett, he's been injured and all that. Lots of interesting stuff with Lefevere. Of course, he's one of the most interesting characters in cycling. But anyway, Sam Bennett going back to Bora Hansgrohe, who he was of course signed from initially with De Koning. And I've given an A-. Of course, Sam Bennett this year, arguably been the best sprinter, definitely got the most wins out of anyone, despite not going to the Tour de France and Cav going to the Tour de France. But I think in that statement, I think you see why Sam Bennett got so many wins. And I think the reason, of course, is Michael Morkov and the overpowered De Koning Quickstep lead-out. Everyone who's gone to Quickstep, whether it be Viviani, whether it be Cavendish this year or Cavendish from the past, Sam Bennett, Gaviria, everybody seems to get some sort of boost from Michael Morkov's leadouts, and it's truly polarizing to see just every sprinter just, get 5 to 10 wins more extra just from Michael Morkov's presence. So I don't think Sam Bennett's going to be quite as good next year with Bora. Bora have a decent lead-out, they've got some solid riders. Jordi Meeus may go into a sort of sprint lead-out role, but I don't think the lead-out that he'll give, or Martin Lasso, whoever they choose as his lead-out man, um, will be quite as good as Michael Morkov, and therefore I've given him A-. I think Bennett's a great rider for Bora to have, especially with Sagan going. And I think, yeah, A- is good. It's definitely a good transfer from Bora. He should get maybe 5-6 wins. I think that's a solid estimation for Sam Bennett next season in terms of at the World Tour level. Then you got John Degenkolb, who's gone to DSM. Now, this might be a bit of a low rating, a B. This guy is someone who, in his past life, 5-6 years ago, he was a monument winner. He's double monument winner, I believe. I think he won MSR and Roubaix, I think, just like Christoph had. He's a very good rider. However, he's declined over the past 3-4 years since his big crash at. I think he was the one with the big crash, or was it Christoph? Not sure, but he's definitely declined recently. And I think he's kind of become a middling sort of hard classics rider, sprinter sort of guy. So he can definitely get top 5s, top 10s here and there, but he's not someone that's going to provide the huge result that I guess Sagan could still provide at this stage of his career. So it's a B, potentially B+, maybe A-, depending on your leeway. And then these riders below here, I think these are all, except for David de la Cruz, these guys are all sort of youngsters. These guys are U23 guys who are at Conti level, or is youth level sort of, is youth team sort of not in Conti level? I don't know. They do their own youth races, I guess, so they're not competing with pro Conti teams. So all of these guys are the real youngsters of a peloton, sort of 19, 20, 21. So the first one is Filippo Baroncini, and realistically, all these guys are good grades. I'm just going to go through, because they're all great riders, fantastic riders, and hence have been snapped up first, but I'm just going to go through their specialization and how good sort of their team has done to secure their services. So I think Baroncini is a great rider. This guy can time trial. I think he won under 23 Italian TT champs, second in the national road race as well. And he's done very good in the Giro, won 2 or 3 stages, and recently as well in some of the smaller Italian races, has continued to excel with Golpag Balan, who of course is Juan Ayuso's team as well. So I think Trek being able to secure his services is quite good. He's one of the better U23 sort of youth riders at the moment, and I think, yeah, based off that, A- is a solid grade. Aspion Helmosa, he's another one who did very good in the Giro, very good rider. And again, he continues with the Danish tradition. There's a lot of Danish climbers that are kind of coming up, and he's another good one. And then you got Sian Utebrooks to Bora Hansgrohe, and that's an A+ rating. Now Sian he's been compared to Remco Evenepoel. He's probably not quite as good as Remco Evenepoel, or at least his junior results wouldn't say he's quite as good. He's not been winning, European junior road races with 10-minute advantage. Not quite that good, but still very good. He's come, I think, either first or second in nearly every race he's run, or he's cycled rather. And I think for Bora to get this guy, this is a fantastic signing for Bora. I've given them A+, because this guy, of course, he was looked at De Koning. De Koning had a serious look at him. I've seen loads of interviews, not loads of interviews, but a lot of media coverage and media articles surrounding them, and a lot of fans. Of course, he's Belgium. They just thought that he's Belgium, he's young, he's a climber. Lefebvre is going to have a field day and sign him, but no, he went to Bora instead. So that has to be congratulated for Bora, and I think as a whole they've had quite a good season signing some climbers. Sam Bennett and this guy, of course, who's a very very talented rider. Probably him and Ayuso were probably the most sought after U23 prospects. So therefore they've been given the A+ rating, and congratulations to their teams that have signed them. Then you got Henri van den Biel, who again, he's a climber. He got third in the Giro, very good rider. He's done quite well in the last 2 or 3 years. He's done quite well in the Baby Giro. Of course, with Tom Pidcock, he was second, I think, in 2020 as well, along with his third this year. He's a very good rider, and DSM should be happy to have kept him from the dev team. Of course, a lot of riders from the DSM dev team have infamously gone to other teams, which is a little bit sour for them, but they've definitely done quite a good job in securing Van den Biel's services for next season. Then you got Luke Plapp. He's a little bit more of an unknown quantity. Personally, I saw him riding. According to PCS, he's only ridden 2 races this season, which is not a very big sample size. However, he did quite well in those races. I saw him win the U23 ITT champs in the national road race in Australia. A very good performance. And of course, he's a very good track rider as well. And then in the road race, he attempted a ridiculous 60k solo, which was quite ambitious. It was very interesting. He developed about a 3-minute, 2-minute advantage with 30k to go, and then he just couldn't push it anymore. But anyways, he seems to be a very strong rider, sort of a Baradeur, sort of flat, punchy sort of guy. Of course, in the Santos Tour Down Under Festival race, which is sort of the not Santos Tour Down Under Festival, they kind of had a substitute race for the Tour Down Under this year because of COVID and everything, and they only did a couple of stages, but they did, of course, you have to do Willunga. That's the tradition. If they didn't do Willunga, I don't know what would have happened. There would have been some carnage, let me tell you that much. But yeah, they did Willunga, of course, and Plapp got second behind Richie Port, which was a very good result. So I think Ineos continues their long lineage of signing some Australian riders, coming from like Mick Rogers, Simon Gerrans, Richie Port, of course, Rowan Dennis, all these guys. And Plapp I guess he's sort of like a Rowan Dennis sort of prototype rider. He's a solid guy on the flat, seems to have an engine, and can climb a bit. And then you've got the Haaland twins. Now, they might be just. I mean, if they're any level close to their counterpart in the soccer world, Erling Haaland, this would be an insane signing. And well, I've gone and said that this is an insane signing. I've given them both A+, both Tobias and Anders. UnoX have really done a fantastic job in recruiting this season with Nicholas Egg and these two as well. These two. I think Tobias is potentially more of a... Tobias is the better rider slightly. I think he's won... I think he did better in the Giro Under 23. I think he's recently won a U23 race as well, beating Anders and several others. And yeah, I think these two are fantastic signings. These are both A+ signings. And yeah, UnoX have done a fantastic job in holding them for next season and going into their full team. Because, of course, there'd undoubtedly be a lot of poachers going for them, but they've kept the Haaland-Johannesson twins for next season, and therefore both A+. I think that's a fantastic job. And UnoX are actually probably a team that next year they're going to try to make a push for World Tour, probably with a plethora of fantastic riders now joining them, including Johannesson, including Egg, including their existing talent such as Tiller. So UnoX transfers have kind of shown their ambition to go to the World Tour at one point, or at some point. And then you got Finn Fisher Black, who's been poached from the Jumbo development team to UAE to continue their raiding of youth across the nation, across the world. I've given them a B+. This is a fantastic deal. Finn Fisher Black, just like his sister, I believe, Niamh Fisher Black in the women's peloton, World Tour peloton. He's a very fantastic rider. He's a climber. He's done very well in the Giro. And basically all of these guys, they've done very good at the Baby Giro. All of these 7 or so that I've just said in a row, they've all done very good in the Giro, and Finn Fisher Black is no different. Perhaps not as good as Uta Brooks and Van den Abel and Helmosa, and definitely not as good as Ayuso, but still a very good rider. And he's consistently done top 5 results in the U23 level. And the final signing is David de la Cruz. And I kind of saw this signing, and I sort of saw... at the same time, I saw the Marc Soler deal, and I realized this is basically like a swap deal, because of course de la Cruz is going to Movistar, whilst Soler is going to UAE, and of course they're from the opposite teams. So I think UAE got the advantage here. They got Soler. I think de la Cruz is slightly worse than Soler. I don't think it's a big difference. I think de la Cruz, he's more consistent in the Grand Tours. I think in this third week especially, he's able to get top 10s in GTs. Like last year, I think he got 7th in the Vuelta, which is quite an unheralded performance. No one really saw that. No one really talked about it. A bit of a Zubeldia there, the invisible man. But he did get 7th in that tour, and he did quite well in Volta a Burgos, got 3rd recently. He's a good rider. And Movistar, this is quite a prototypical Movistar signing. The guy's name is like David de la Cruz. He's Spanish. Everything about him is a Movistar climber sort of signing. It makes sense, and I've kind of gone with that middling grade of B. He's a good rider, but nothing spectacular. And that kind of rounds up the show here, or what show, I don't know. I don't really think it's a very good show, but regardless, that kind of rounds up the transfers of this season, or the early season transfers at the very least. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned something. I hope my humor wasn't too bad. I hope you learned something different throughout the last 30 minutes of absolute babbling on forever from from yours truly. So yeah, that's it for the video, and hopefully I'll see you next time. Ka-chow.